Hello, hello, hello. Let me just copy this and put it into Teams for you. SUPER. Blah, 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 blah. Right, I'm going to get going pretty quickly today. This is just a recap of the Cold War. So we're not actually learning anything new. I switched it up a little bit for you. So we're not actually learning anything new today, but we are recapping what we've been doing over the last few weeks. It's really important that we do this because the Cold War has such big things that you need to learn about in a very, very short space of time, in terms of you've got 50 years to cover. Now, you might think 50 years is not particularly massive, but when you're looking at certain events that then have like that cross, that link, that cause this, cause that, and the fact that the Cold War, the skill set that you need to know is about importance, about consequences, about a narrative. It's really important to go back over and refresh your memory of the different Cold War events. So that's my plan today, is just to briefly go over some things. Now, when I set you your work, I've put some BBC Biteside links on, I've put some super facts, I've put the revision guide, I've done as much as I can. So what I'd like you to do is you have a couple of grids, and I want you to fill out at least three, try and get 3 things that you know or remember about that event or idea or person. If you are really struggling, I will accept 1, but really trying to aim for 3, because then it will help your understanding. It'll keep that thing, keep it really live. Oh, it'll keep that in your brain. Okay, if I say Truman Doctrine, you'll know what you mean. But it provides. This is something I did with the year 11s now in year 9. It's something that you could use to revise. Obviously, for them, it didn't really work out because their exams got cancelled. But for you guys, it will work. So let's start. I am going to try and not waffle, because we know I'm good for that. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to try and do my key terms in purple. For you. I am going to then talk about the USSR in red. I feel like that's only appropriate. The USA in blue. The UK in green. And any other country in pink. Hopefully that makes sense and you can read it and we're good to go. Grand Alliance then. Our Grand Alliance is part of World War II. It is an idea of these countries coming together to fight and defeat Hitler. So we have, in the Grand Alliance, we do have the UK. We have the USA. And we have the USSR. France are not involved. That is really important to know. I am going to move you forward so you can see. This is the beauty of having this on my suitcase, so you can just hear my voice and see what I'm doing. And so we've got the UK, the USA, and the USSR. Unlike your big 3, France is not involved, and France is replaced with the USSR. You want to think the Grand Alliance is the Grand Alliance of the U's. Hence why I say UK rather than Great Britain. So our first meeting of these countries is at Tehran. Okay, that's in 1943. We do then have our 3 countries meeting. I'll go over the leaders in just a second. And they agree there that they are going to open up a second front in France with the UK and the USA. That Stalin's going to open up a second front with Japan once the Nazis have been defeated. And it's a really positive meeting. There we have our lovely friend. Let's start the green so it goes in that order. We've got Churchill. We've got FDR. And we've got Stalin. Okay. And they are there. And it's a very positive, a positive conference. Again, I'm not going to go into massive detail because that's your job to go and review it. The next one then is we have the Yalta Conference in February 1945. We have the same leaders as before, so I'm going to put that there. And it is all positive. They reiterate some of the things that were going on in the Tehran. So like Stalin joining in Japan, the United Nations, so the fact that the Nazis are going to be hunted down as criminals. So we've got that going on. But they do disagree on Poland, where its borders are going to be, what it looks like, how much Stalin's going to get, and the idea of free elections. What do free elections actually look like? Is it multiple parties and multiple ideas and people getting an actual free choice? Or is it multiple people for the same party? Depending on what your different idea is in terms of communist and capitalist, depends on what you believe in terms of free elections. Now, it's really important noting that the third and final conference that we talk about, the Potsdam Conference, World War II now has finished. We still have our same countries being the UK, USA, and USSR, but now our leaders have changed. Well, I say they've changed. Stalin, still there. Good old Uncle Joe. FDR, unfortunately, has kicked the bucket and has been replaced with Truman. And Churchill arrogantly loses the election and is replaced with Attlee. Okay. Now, this is much more a tense affair. It is, they don't really agree on very much. It's only really going over the things that have happened at the previous two conferences. So, for example, they agree about a UN. They talk about Japan. They talk about and eventually agree on reparations. They talk about hunting down Nazi criminals. But there is a real issue, again, over the free elections and what they look like. There is an issue over reparations. What do they look like? Is it money? Is it things? How much should Germany give to the USSR? And also we have the small little matter of the A-bomb coming into play with Truman saying, "Oh, hi, Stalin, just so you know, I'm about to drop an A-bomb." What? So Stalin, as you can imagine, not particularly happy with that, and finds it a real kind of kick in the teeth. Let me just double check back through my notes to see that I am covering everything that you need. Here we go. Drop that, never mind. So, our next little bit that then we looked at was the Soviet expansion, the Soviet tactics or salami tactics that the Soviet Union used. So the Red Army, hence why I'm in red, don't leave Eastern Europe. Now, Stalin has a 5-step plan of removing any government people that do not agree with him. He also gets rid of the free speech and the free media. He puts in a communist government. He arrests people. He has this 5-step plan, if you remember, of making sure that each country becomes completely loyal to him and is now a Soviet little satellite Soviet state. Okay. Now, you've got places like Poland, Romania that happen to. Okay. We then move on to, I'm going to do this here first. We then get the development of the long and Novikov telegrams. So the long telegram, I'm going to call it the long T, is from a guy called George Kennan to Truman. And it says that Stalin is a threat, that the Soviet Union cannot be trusted, that actually they need to be handled with care, and they are going to be a problem for the rest of the world. The Novikov telegram, again, is by a guy called Novikov, is effectively the same thing, but the opposite way around, saying that America are going for world dominance, that they are not to be trusted, that they're going to interfere with Stalin and his policies, and it creates and whips up a lot of tension. This is only then made worse. This is going to be my last one before I rub this off. By the Iron Curtain speech. Now, the Iron Curtain speech is made by Churchill. It's made in a place called Fulton, Missouri, in America, to the American diplomats, to Truman, really, and is talking about how an Iron Curtain has descended over Europe, meaning that Europe is now divided into two, East and West, and that there is now a problem for the world as it's capitalism versus communism. I've taken a picture of that for you, which I will then load onto Teams, and you will be able to use that. I'll give you 30 seconds just to take a screenshot if you so wish, but like I said, I've taken a picture. Here we go. Comes my personalised hand sanitizer. Gets this right off. This board is not amazing. Please bear with me. You can see I'm losing viewers because I am cleaning my cleaning my board. I mean, you are obviously free to not watch this or tune out off and watch it when it eventually goes up after I've finished rambling. But me trying to speak it through will be a lot easier than you going finding it out for yourselves. But like I said, you are free to go and do that if you don't want my help. But since I am the expert, I would listen to me. I love Cold War stuff. I'm just gutted I've not been able to teach it. Here we go. Boom. So we've just done the Iron Curtain. We've looked at the origins of the Cold War. Now we're going to go into a little bit deeper. Well, these are all still the origins, and carry on after the telegrams and the Iron Curtain speech. Okay, so we have the Truman Doctrine in 1947, which is a policy by Truman of containment. Okay, and it effectively is saying about keeping communism where it is, not allowing it to spread any further, and helping countries that are in a position of turmoil after World War II and rebuilding, that need some help, and offering them aid in any way that they can. For example, we've got Greece, who are in a civil war from the newly elected capitalist government, have ousted the communist government, and the communist government do not accept it. Britain is involved, can't afford to carry on, so Truman and America get involved into Greece to help capitalism prevail. This is then funded by Marshall Aid or Marshall Plan money. It doesn't matter which you call it, but both are the same. It is $17 billion worth of aid to these Western countries or Western Europe in exchange for supporting America, American goods, or having air bases or nuclear bases at this point in the country. For example, Britain received, I think it's $3,176 million worth of Marshall Aid to help rebuild, because we had an empire that was we were paying for, and we had then costs of trying to get rid of our empire, and paying quite a lot of damages of the bad that we'd done with the empire, because remember, the empire was not a good thing for Britain. On the whole, we were absolutely savage towards people, and we were bankrupt. So we had a lot of Marshall Aid in order to support Britain and support the country, along with France and West Germany. As a direct result, Stalin sets up Cominform. Cominform effectively is the USSR version of the Truman Doctrine. Looking to contain capitalism to where it is and support the communist countries. Furthermore, Comecon is a very similar thing, and it centralizes, I think it's a Z, I think, the satellite states economy. I can never spell this word. Basically saying to each satellite state that they needed to specialize in something. So, for example, West Germany should focus on industry, whereas Romania should focus on agriculture. So having something that they could specialize in so that the Soviet Union could then pinch resources. You're probably thinking now, Miss, why have you put this here? Because I wanted to leave it as a separate thing. Right, so at the Potsdam Conference, it is officially finalised that Berlin and Germany would be divided into four. I'm going to put this all in pink because it does all of them. Okay, Berlin is in the Eastern Zone. So it is also divided because having the capital is a prestigious thing. They don't want Stalin to have that level of prestige. So they divide Berlin and Germany into four zones, with each of the Grand Alliance members, along with France, controlling a separate section of Berlin and Germany, meaning that there is a capitalist heartland in a communist zone. This then leads to the Berlin blockade. I'm going to do it in this, like this. I hope this makes sense. So France, America, and Britain all come together and say, "Hey, well, we're all Westerners. So why don't we merge our zones and get a new currency? And let's not bother telling Stalin." And that was part of the point of the Grand Alliance, was they meant us to communicate, tell each other things, keep things. Oh, hello, Stalin, Uncle Joe. It was meant to be a form of communication, keeping that alliance open. When France, America, and the UK merged their zones without telling Stalin, from bizonia to trizonia, and then create a new currency without including Stalin, it makes him very angry, very paranoid, as I'm sure Stalin will agree in the comments. And he then blockades the rails, roads, and canals of West Berlin so that they are starved out, and it is then a way to get rid of the West in the Eastern Zone. As a direct result, then, the Allies in the West take it upon themselves to go with the Berlin airlift even. So it's 10 months of supplies coming in by air. I'm going to call it supply airways, meaning that all the supplies that are needed in West Berlin are dropped in for 10 months by the airlines or the jets on planes. There's lots of shortages, but the West do not give up, and unfortunately Stalin is humiliated, and he has to call off the blockade after 10 months in order to try and save a little bit of face. As a direct result of that, then, we have the creation of NATO, a defensive alliance against the Soviet Union, and Stalin is incredibly threatened. While this is all going on, we do have the arms race. Now, the arms race is the race for I'm going to do it in the colours of who gets it first. The A-bomb, the H-bomb, the H-bomb 2.0, and missiles. Now, America does win the arms race in that it does achieve having all of these things firsthand, and the Soviets do cheat a little bit by creating cardboard cutouts of missiles in order to make sure that America are spending lots of money on the arms race, and really pushing the world towards, if it was ever to go into war, into a nuclear warfare. At the same time as that, nice little voice break there, we do have the space race. Now, the space race is won by the Soviets. We have Sputnik, followed by Sputnik, and it really is a to and fro kind of the space race, I would say. Initially, the USSR win it by sending up the satellite of Sputnik. You've then got that followed up by the absolute failure of Sputnik and the creation of NASA. The Soviets get the first man into space of Yuri Gagarin on the 12th of April, 1961. But by 1969, the Apollo 11 mission has landed on the moon, and America claim they have won the space race. But it's definitely a to in and fro in, and it's all about competitiveness and amping up that tension. Let me just put this in like this. I'm going to put it in pink. By by 1955, we have the creation of the Warsaw Pact, which is a direct consequence of the creation of NATO. So NATO and the Warsaw Pact are military alliances, NATO being a military alliance between the West and the Warsaw Pact being a military alliance between the East. They're to protect communism or capitalism should the other idea attack the other. Now, Stalin does start out the creation of the Warsaw Pact, but he is unfortunately dead by the time that it is finished, and it is then carried on by a guy called Khrushchev. That is me going over everything that we have learned in 26 minutes over the past few weeks. I'm going to sit here. I'll let you just see it, but I have got pictures which I'll put onto Teams. What my plan is then for you is to use the materials that I've provided along with Bite Size, my clips that I've used over the past few weeks teaching you. And I want 3 bullet points about each of the different key terms, please. It's really important that you do this with detail. Now, obviously, it is on a 4-piece of PowerPoint. If you would prefer to do it in a different structure, that's not a problem. So I know that I'm going to pick her out here, but I know Abby would probably do some beautiful spider diagram or presentation. I know a few of the girls will, like Charlie, and so it's up to you. I've just put it as a grid because some people will prefer the grid, but if you are like, Miss, I don't want to do it as a grid, I would prefer to do it as a spider diagram or make some flashcards. That's fine, as long as I can see evidence of that uploaded onto Teams, please. That would be absolutely fine. And yeah, that's all you need, really. Use Bite Size, use my clips, use this clip, use the super facts and the revision guide that I've put onto Teams and show my homework for you, and get as much detail as you physically can. If you need anything, give me a shout. I am here all day in the grim, cloudy, I was looking if it was raining, Plymouth weather. I'm not going anywhere, so just give me a shout, and I will speak to you next Monday. Have a good week. Bye.